Hey, welcome to the Eddie Hyatt podcast. I'm so glad you've joined me today. I'm going to begin today talking about freedom. Probably over the next 3 days, this is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Freedom is a God thing. God desires freedom for his creatures. In the context of this theme of freedom, I want to talk about the Canadian truck convoy, which is also called the Freedom Convoy, which has captured attention, not only in Canada, but in America and throughout the world. It's amazing. My wife, Susan, is a Canadian, we both lived in Canada. I lived in Canada for 8 years, and so we are very intrigued and very interested in what is happening and how the Canadian government is responding to this Freedom Convoy, which has actually been very peaceful. In fact, someone recently said that downtown Ottawa is the capital of Canada. They said downtown Ottawa has never been so peaceful and safe. And we have been told that there have been ministry outreach teams. There's been a lot of Christian activity going on, handing out of Bibles and prayer and different things happening. And so it's quite an incredible thing that is happening. And if you want to understand it, you got to understand it within the context of this word freedom. And again, they are calling it themselves the Freedom Convoy. Because you see, we were created for freedom, and the human spirit longs for freedom. And so this truck convoy, this Freedom Convoy, is actually an expression and a cry for freedom. It is a populist uprising of common, everyday people wanting to be free, wanting back their freedom from all of the draconian lockdowns and mandates that have come forth as a result of the coronavirus. What's happening there in Canada is not an insurrection. Now, they are being smeared. These people are being smeared by the mainstream media and by the Canadian government that is in power. Not all the government. There's an opposition party that is standing up, speaking up for them, but the Canadian government is really seeking to suppress and forcefully close down and stop this Freedom Convoy, this cry for freedom. So we need to keep these people in prayer and pray that God will have his way and that his will be done and his kingdom come in the midst of the situation. So no, this is not an insurrection. They have no desire to take over the government, and it's not an anti-vaccine movement, because I read that 90% of the truckers involved have been vaccinated. No, they're just wanting their freedom. They want their freedom back to live their lives and to be able to make choices for themselves and their own health and their families. You know, Canada has had some of the most draconian and harsh mandates and shutdowns of any country in the world. A friend who is a Canadian told me about returning to his home province after a business trip and being forced to quarantine in a government-designated hotel. Even though he tested negative for the virus, he didn't have the virus, but yet he was forced to quarantine, not at home, in the same city in which he lived, and his home just sitting empty a few blocks away. He was forced to rent a hotel room in a government-designated hotel and pay $200 a night and quarantine himself there. And not only that, but he said the police checked out their rooms on a regular basis because others were quarantined there. The police monitored the rooms in the hotel to make sure they were not leaving their rooms. He made this statement. He said, "I feel like I'm in a communist country." Well, this is what the Canadian truck convoy is all about, the Freedom Convoy. People are tired of living under the thumb of a tyrannical government that has taken away their freedoms in the name of public safety. But as we know, we have found out now that the recovery rate for the COVID virus is similar to the flu. 97, I believe it's the last I heard, 99.7% of people recover. The people who are, as we know, who are most affected by it and most likely to, lose their life are the people who are quite elderly and people who have underlying and other diseases. And so the Freedom Convoy it's people saying enough is enough. We're not taking any more of this. We want our lives back. We want our freedom. And so what role should the church play in this and Christians? Well, let me say this. Freedom is of God. God is a God that wants freedom for his people. And so any peaceful movement for individual freedom from government tyranny is a positive thing and should be wholeheartedly supported by the church and individual Christians. Because as I said, God is a God of freedom. Freedom is a God thing. Jesus said in John 8:36, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Jesus came to bring real, true freedom to this whole world. Paul said in his letter to the Galatian Christians in chapter 5, verse 1, he said, stand fast in the freedom wherewith Christ has made you free. So as Christians, we need to support this freedom convoy. And what we need to do is bring the emphasis that ultimate freedom is to be found only in Jesus Christ. Excuse me. Now, this is what happened in colonial America when the Great Awakening occurred alongside widespread civil protest against British tyranny. Now, many people don't realize this, but there were protests, civil protest, public protest against the British government and its mandates and taxes and regulations that it was imposing upon the colonists in 18th century colonial America. Now, at the same time these protests were going on, there was a great awakening taking place as well. These two movements were happening at the very same time. And in the next podcast, the next episode, I'm going to show you and talk to you about how the preachers of the Great Awakening in the 18th century, in the 1700s, they did not oppose those who were protesting and standing against the British and declaring that they weren't going to put up with the British tyranny anymore. The preachers of the Great Awakening did not oppose that, but they brought their influence about Jesus being the ultimate key to human freedom. And the two movements brought about the founding of the United States of America. And this is the reason that we need to support and to affirm this freedom convoy in Canada. This could be a key for God doing some incredible things in Canada, in America, in Ireland, in Uganda, and around the world. And we'll talk about this more tomorrow. Hey, this is Eddie Hyatt. This is the Eddie Hyatt podcast. Check out my website, eddiehyatt.com. I have written a book along these lines. It's called To Comply or Not Comply. It is available on Amazon. So if you go and look up my name or look up To Comply or Not Comply, that book is available. And let's see, I think I have one right here in front of me. I did have one right here in front of me. I wanted to read to you what the subtitle is, but the subtitle is something like this: A Christian Guide to Government Lockdowns, Mandates, Church Closure, and Other Forms of Government Tyranny. So anyway, it is a Christian guide to help us how to deal with when there is government overreach and governments taking on roles that they have not been given by God to rule over and control people's lives. That's called to comply or not comply. And again, this is Eddie Hyatt. If I can be a blessing to you, pray with you about anything, go to my website. My email address is there. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you tomorrow.